Names were a very personal affair for the clones who served in the Grand Army of the Republic. They were one of the few individual traits that clones were allowed to have, and they were always chosen with care. Some clones chose fairly normal names, like Rex. Other clones, like Fives and Banks, adopted nicknames that other clones had given them due to personal quirks. But some clone nicknames had secrets to them. Few would guess that the chosen name of CC1004, Gree, meant anything important, but it did. Gree's name was actually a reference that says a whole lot about his character.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
Gree was the commander of the 41st Elite Corps, a legion of highly skilled clone troopers who specialized in working with native populations. Under the command of Luminara Ondili, Gree and his men were tasked with carrying out the Republic's infamous militia model strategy. In the militia model, small units of clones would land on embattled worlds and trained local loyalist partisans in combat techniques, allowing them to take back their own worlds without the need for full-scale Republic intervention. This was one of the Republic's favorite tactics, most notably put into practice on Harun Kal, Giju, and Kashyyyk, as it allowed the GAR to conserve its resources. But as we discussed in a recent video, most clones hated militia model missions. They were a pain for a variety of reasons, one of the biggest being the challenge of dealing with native sentient species. Many native populations across the galaxy had cultures with intricate sets of customs that outsiders could easily misunderstand. It was incredibly important for clones tasked with setting up militias to know how not to offend the people they were supposed to be training. The 41st Elite Corps was intended to specialize in these sorts of missions, as its members all had extensive training in xenoanthropology. Commander Gree was the perfect clone to lead such a unit. He was an absolute nerd when it came to alien cultures, an unusual hobby the Kaminoans had actually tolerated, as they believed it could have ended up being tactically advantageous. Gree also enjoyed talking with fellow amateur xenoanthropologists, and it was for that reason he chose the name Gree. His name was actually a reference. It was the name of an obscure alien species that, long before the Republic was even a thought, had set out to rule the stars. The Gree were an eldritch-looking lot of grey-skinned cephalopods. They were native to a planet that was also named Gree, which had an atmosphere unbreathable to humans, and by the time of the Clone Wars, a surface best described as a wasteland. Gree and half a dozen other remote planets made up the Gree Enclave, an extraordinarily distant sector of space on the very edge of the galaxy. They were still around by the time of the Clone Wars, but most galactic citizens were unaware of them as they were incredibly isolationist. By the time of the Clone Wars, it had been over 3,500 years since a Gree had been seen in the Republic. The height of Gree civilization was long gone. They had peaked 30,000 years before the Battle of Yavin, and they had been an extremely advanced civilization for tens of thousands of years before that. 100,000 years before the Battle of Yavin, when most species were still primitive and the humans of Coruscant were just starting to build their great city, the Gree traveled the stars, studying the younger races. The ancient Gree Empire had rules that forbade them from sharing their technology, but they were still known to offer technical assistance to the younger races, such as when they helped the ancient humans lay out the foundations of Galactic City. In those days, there were only a few other major spacefaring civilizations. The greatest of these was the godlike Celestials, of whom the Gree were technically vassals. Others included the Sharu of Rafa IV, the Kwa of Dathomir, the Colomai of Colomus, and near the end of the Gree Empire's height, the Rakata of Lehon. Many of these civilizations were considered to be little more than myths by the time of the Clone Wars, as the Rakata drove the Celestials out of the galaxy, bombed the Sharu and the Kwa into primitivism, and seized most of the holdings of the Colomai and the Gree. The Gree fought a number of wars in their time, many of them against species that later died out. Among the longest of their wars was a border dispute with the Kwa, which lasted until the ever-expanding infinite empire of the Rakata pushed both species back to their borders. The Gree then fought a war with the Infinite Empire, which saw their territory greatly reduced. This was a better fate than most other species that fought back against the Rakata, however. The bloodthirsty, cannibalistic rulers of the Infinite Empire were known to glass rebellious worlds. As the Infinite Empire rose and fell, Gree's civilization slowly declined, and the Gree retreated to a small pocket of space in the far reaches of the galaxy. They adopted a policy of isolation even as the Infinite Empire collapsed and the Galactic Republic rose to take its place. For most of Republic history, they ignored galactic civilization, though the Republic was well aware of their existence. They are only known to have made contact with the outside galaxy once, during the Cold War between the Republic and the true Sith Empire, when they reached out to both the Republic and the Empire for aid due to one of their old hypergates coming online. By the time of the Clone Wars, the Republic had expanded to the point of bordering the Gree Enclave, but the Gree continued their policy of isolation and the Republic was content to leave them be. Visitors to Gree space had to be given permission to land on Gree worlds by the Gree Grand Council, and very few beings were actually given this permission. One of these few was Count Dooku, who visited Gree shortly before the outbreak of the Clone Wars to purchase some old Gree technology. Gree society was built around a system of 4 castes. The first caste were the crafters, who were responsible for creating everything from instruments to cities. There were also the researchers, who developed new technologies. The operators were the ones who controlled the secrets of Gree high technology, something that eventually led to the decline of their civilization, while the administrators were responsible for government and politics. No Gree had a role in menial labor or combat in the old days of their empire. Such tasks were relegated to droids. Long ago, the 4 castes lived together in perfect equality. Then, everything changed when the operators started to seize power. As the Gree civilization reached its zenith, the operators became dominant due to the importance of their role in society, and they became jealously protective of the secrets of Gree technology because of it. Over the millennia, the art of operating most Gree technology was lost, as operators chose to take the secrets to their graves instead of passing them on to the next generation. By the time of the Clone Wars, the crafter and researcher castes didn't exist anymore due to the technological regression of Gree civilization, and many Gree ended up casteless. The technology of the Gree was their society's defining feature. At their height, the Gree were far more advanced than any contemporary society during the Imperial era, having mastered quantum technology, dimensional physics, and stellar engineering. Their technology was extraordinarily alien in nature. The operating controls of their most advanced machines worked like musical instruments and had to be played in the right way for the machines to function. The operation of Gree technology was a very delicate process, hence the existence of an entire operator caste. Among the greatest achievements of the Gree civilization were the artificial organisms that would terraform planets to suit their masters' needs. Advanced artificial intelligence that had to be safely contained within strange artifacts, navigational computers so precise that not even the Empire could match them, and hypergates which allowed the Gree to instantaneously travel through hyperspace from one point to another. Hypergate technology was the backbone of ancient Gree Empire, but the Gree developed other forms of hyperspace travel as well, including the type of solar sail that was integrated into Count Dooku's personal craft. By the time of the Clone Wars, most Gree technology had been inoperable for millennia due to the decay of Gree society. Nonetheless, they carefully maintained their old equipment, treating them like relics and zealously protecting them from outsider thieves. They always loathed to share their technology with the outside galaxy, though it wasn't impossible to do so. Dooku, for example, acquired a solar sail and a private army of assassin droids from them, and the Republic was also able to receive Gree help in repairing the infrastructure of Galactic City at least once. Despite the unique role the Gree played in galactic history, most of the galaxy was simply unaware of them by token of their isolation and lack of relevance in galactic politics. The only ones who were aware of the Gree during the Clone Wars would have been xenoanthropology nerds, which is why Commander Gree chose their name as his own. He reasoned that if anyone knew enough to comment on his name, then they would likely share his interests, and he would know that they were worth talking to. So that's the untold story of the Gree, the ancient aliens Cthulhu probably has nightmares about. But what do you think? Would you like to hear more about the Kwa, the Sharu, or the Rakata, the Gree's ancient rivals? Feel free to post your thoughts in the comments section below. And just before you go guys, I have an exciting announcement to make. We have opened a new channel called The Braved. We dive way back into history across multiple eras to examine all the badasses of these different eras. So if that sounds like it's up your alley, that is the first link in the description below. And if you're more of the music type, our Relax Jack music channel exists as well. We use a lot of the music from that channel in this channel's videos, so you can check that out too. And if you just want to join the wider community, join us on our main Geetsly's Discord where you can chat to myself and other Star Wars fans, and our Geetsly's gaming network. Anyways guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.